All right, listen up. This is a Code Ninja Security Advisory. Classification is TLP clear. We're putting this briefing out because of a really rapid escalation in coordinated threats we've seen in just the first few weeks of this year. This is a time-sensitive disclosure. You need to pay close attention. Welcome to the War Room, Defenders. Look, 2026 has had a hostile start, and this is absolutely not a drill. The intel we're about to go over, it demands your immediate attention. It's time to hunt, it's time to patch, and it's time to harden your environments. So here's our briefing structure. We're going to start with the intel, break down the timeline of this whole surge, and then we'll do a deep dive on a critical SAP flaw. From there, we'll zoom out to the other active campaigns, but most importantly, we're going to get to the immediate hardening protocols. That's your direct action plan. Before we close out with a strategic assessment of what this all means. Okay, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on the threat level right now, you have to see how these campaigns have been stacking on top of each other. This isn't just one threat we're talking about. It's a perfect storm. The stage was really set back in late 2025 with that Trust Wallet supply chain compromise. You know, that's where attackers poison a legit piece of software right at the source. But then, man, the new year hit us like a ton of bricks. On January 7th, the n8mare RCE in the n8n automation platform dropped, a perfect 10.0 on the CVSS scale, which is as bad as it gets. Just a week later, SAP discloses multiple critical flaws. The very next day, Microsoft is patching a zero-day that was already being used in attacks. And by the 19th, we had solid indicators of an active campaign targeting Fortinet single sign-on. You see, we're looking at multiple, totally unrelated campaigns all hitting at the same time. Now let's zoom in on just one of these threats so you can really understand the danger we're all facing. We're going to take a hard look at a critical vulnerability that sits at the very core of a lot of enterprise environments. 9.6. That is the CVSS base score for CVE-2026-0500. It's a vulnerability in the SAP Wily Introscope Enterprise Manager. It's rated critical, and trust me, it's for a very good reason. It requires 0 privileges, and the attack complexity is low. That is a bad combination. So this vulnerability allows for remote code execution, or RCE. And in simple terms, that means an attacker with no authentication can run any command they want on your server. We are talking about total system compromise. Game over. And here's how the attack actually works. An attacker crafts a malicious Java Network Launch Protocol file, that's a JNLP file, and just hosts it on a public URL. All it takes is for one of your users to click that link. That is it. The Introscope server then processes that file and runs the attacker's commands, which leads to a complete breach of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The whole shebang. But that SAP flaw, it's just one front in this war. What we're actually seeing is a multi-front assault that's targeting different layers of your enterprise stack all at the same time. The blast radius here is just getting wider and wider. A perfect 10.0. That's the CVSS score for CVE-2026-0501, the RCE in the n8n workflow automation platform. They've nicknamed it Ni8mare, and it fits. This is an unauthenticated maximum severity vulnerability. It doesn't get worse than this. And here's why it is so devastating. Think about it. These n8n platforms, they aggregate credentials for hundreds of services. We're talking AWS, Azure, GitHub, databases, you name it. So compromising just one n8n instance is literally like finding a master key that unlocks your entire cloud and SaaS infrastructure. It is a single point of catastrophic failure. And if that isn't enough, there is an active campaign hammering Fortinet devices. We have specific, actionable intelligence on this one. You need to hunt for these IOCs in your logs right now. A malicious single sign-on, or SSO, login from the account cloudinit@mail.io. It's coming from the IP 104.28.244.115. The attackers are pulling out configuration files and creating backdoor admin accounts so they can stick around. And then we have the Windows zero-day CVE 2026-2085. Now, don't let the lower CVSS score on this one fool you. The crucial point here, and I'm quoting Microsoft directly, is that this was being actively exploited in the wild before a patch was even available. Attackers were already using it to bypass core memory protections. Okay, we've covered the intelligence. Now we pivot to countermeasures. This is your immediate action plan. And let me be clear, these are not suggestions. These are operational necessities. First up, patching. For your SAP systems, you need to apply Security Note 3666869 for the Introscope RCE and also Note 3687749 for a critical S/4HANA SQL injection. For all of your Windows endpoints, that patch for the 0-day, the one that came out on January 14th, has to be deployed everywhere without delay. Next, configuration and mitigation. On your Fortinet devices, check for those IOCs we just talked about. If you find them, you have to assume a breach and reset all your credentials. For SAP Introscope, if for some reason you absolutely cannot patch immediately, there's a workaround. Switch to the standalone workstation package. It gets rid of this specific attack factor. And finally, find every single internet-exposed n8n instance you have and lock it down behind a VPN or zero-trust network access. Period. Now, strategically, here's what you need to be doing starting today. 1. Actively scan all your exposed assets for these vulnerabilities. 2. Monitor for impossible travel scenarios. Logins from 2 different continents in 10 minutes. 3. Scrutinize all unusual SSO activity. And finally, you have to start treating platforms like n8n as Tier 0 assets. They're just as critical as your domain controllers. So, I'm going to ask you directly, are your assets scanned? Are you monitoring for these specific active threats? You need to be able to answer yes to both of those questions by the end of your day. Okay, let's pull back for the final assessment. What does this whole surge tell us about where the adversaries are headed? What's the big picture takeaway from this chaotic start to the year? Here's the most crucial point. Attackers are shifting their focus. They're targeting the layers in between your core systems, your middleware, your automation platforms, your monitoring tools. Why? Because as the core systems get harder to crack, these layers in the middle are often overlooked, they're less defended, and yet they have incredible levels of trust and access. They are the new high-value targets. They offer the keys to the entire kingdom. So this is the question I'm going to leave you with. You spend a fortune building high walls around your castle, your main production databases and servers. But who holds the keys to the watchtower? The monitoring and automation tools that have a privileged view into absolutely everything. That's where the new battle is being fought. Go hunt, stay paranoid. End of briefing.